You smell that? That's the smoke coming out of the writer's ears as they struggle to find a way to make the characters do all of the things that they want them to do, even though nothing makes any sense whatsoever.
Stupid is, stupid does, Mrs. Blue.
I guess.
Greetings, fellow mortals. Just a reminder saying it's just my opinion is for cowards. Oh, and this whole video is going to be absolutely filled with spoilers. You have been warned. In Season 2, Episode 5 of Rings of Power, we start out with the dwarves, with the king deciding to use the rings even though he hates elves more than he loves his own son. The king goes into the mines to find that his son is still working there, even though the dwarf hero already admitted that he was wrong for not despising the elves. Remember, fellow mortals, the lesson of Rings of Power is that you do need to be racist to certain people because they deserve it. I don't say that, but this show definitely does. Also, you should compromise your beliefs and admit when you're wrong, even when you don't think you actually are. Using one of the rings gifted to the dwarves, the king finds a location where he thinks that they can get sunlight from, even though everyone around him says that's a load-bearing wall, and if they break it down, it will collapse the mine. Everyone believes that too because all of the workers evacuate as the king tears through the wall. Oddly enough, the ring and the king were right, proving that all of the experts were just giant idiots that didn't know what they were doing. Even though the dwarves had lived in that mountain for a long time, knew it like the back of their hand, and probably had several different blueprints pointing out what they could and couldn't do, they still failed completely during this emergency, proving once and for all, if you hear whispers in your head, it's okay to go into a construction site and do what you want despite everyone's warnings. All of the dwarves are absolutely delighted, except for the weird stone singers, because they realize that a new technology has stolen their job.
They took your jobs! They took your jobs! They took your jobs!
Back at the forge, everyone is celebrating this new accomplishment with the lamest party I have ever seen. Seriously, why are the dwarves so subdued? I thought they were a loud and boisterous bunch. Considering that multiple societies were about to collapse, I would have assumed that they'd be a little bit happier, but then I remembered that this is Rings of Power, where no one can be happy. Everyone has to be neutral and stoic at all times. Facial expressions are banned. Dumb blacksmith guy talks with obvious villain and reveals that he knows that obvious villain is manipulating him, outright admitting that obvious villain is using cunning language to get what he wants. Despite this, dumb blacksmith guy doesn't kick obvious villain out of the forge, even though obvious villain is going to make rings for the humans, the species that blacksmith guy hates the most. Remember, according to the wisest characters in Rings of Power, it's okay to be racist to the species you hate the most as long as you think that they deserve it. And the show emphasizes its evil point by switching over to the Game of Thrones knockoff storyline. Loser King is already corrupt despite only recently coming to power. So much so that he starts abusing his son with the mommy issue stick. Meanwhile, the wannabe queen, Ashley Ketchum, the best to ever be the best, is talking with Dun's captain. She reveals that fate has changed because of one minor thing that happened, making me question if destiny is really set in stone in this universe and if the writers are really thinking about what they're doing at all. Because if fate is so easily changed, wannabe queen should probably change her perspective on destiny. I mean, he's kind of cringe and has really weird opinions right now, but at least he's not Dr. Disrespect. At least not that I know of. Every time I talk about people in my videos though, something comes out, so I'm a little worried.
I shouldn't have said that. I should not have said that. I shouldn't have said that.
Wannabe Queen tells the Dun's captain that he needs to be steadfast in the storm, and because his top loyalty is to the Wannabe Queen, the Dun's captain will totally take this to heart and not mess up immediately at all. Oh wait, he immediately does that when he goes out into town and sees that they're stripping the weapons of people loyal to the Wannabe Queen. The Dun's captain then has a confrontation with internalized misogyny girl, and Rings of Power emphasizes its weird and evil message that women will always get in each other's way. I don't support it, but I don't know what to tell you. That's what the show says. After finishing his conversation with internalized misogyny girl, Dun's captain removes his sword and gives it up, with the absolutely stellar performance of showing his frustration by clenching and unclenching his fist repeatedly. This is totally weathering the storm and not giving away that he's mad at all. The current regime says that he's no longer a captain, with everyone else screaming that he's their captain, and Dun's captain does nothing to stop this because he's a total idiot. Yes, this is definitely obeying your queen by weathering the storm, instead of, I don't know, calming the hostilities so something terrible doesn't happen. But Dun's captain isn't the only one infected by the stupid. The dumb blacksmith is writing a false letter to his high king, claiming that the forge isn't being used anymore. And of course, the High Elf King realizes that this is false because evil whispering ring that isn't actually evil tells him so. And all of the elves are okay with using these whispering rings even though they know the obvious bad guy was involved with making them. There is no possible way that this could all obviously be part of obvious bad guy's obvious plan. I mean, it's not like the rings functioning perfectly would lull the supposedly wise elves into a false sense of security or anything. It's not like the writers are taking these supposedly intelligent characters and dumbing them down so the plot can occur. No, that would never happen at all.
We still have the Orb of Confusion. Take this!
Well, that was easy.
Back with the dwarves, the Stone Singer lady is once again mad that she got everything that she asked for. She isn't even slightly happy that her husband threw away his pride and that her children won't starve. She then buys an overpriced rock for her daughter's birthday, even though she's already admitted that they don't have enough money to eat. Her husband, the dwarf hero, then disappears in a puff of smoke, never to be seen again for this scene, because they need her to be in trouble and they can't have him help her. Yeah, that's great writing there. Because the Rings of Power is secretly sexist and the women fail at all times, she then drops the round rock that she spent a lot of money on. She then fails to pick up the rock orb because everyone is kicking it away instead of helping her. Which, to be fair, is probably the most realistic aspect of this show, because as soon as you gather a bunch of people into a crowd, they all become enormous assholes. The orb then rolls miraculously far away from the market through a crack that Stone Singer lady struggles to get through herself, goes uphill around a giant rock, drops down a step, and then stops right before a pool of water. And this break in physics and logic occurs so that Stone Singer lady can conveniently find this cave. That way, Stone Singer lady can use her singing to try to find the orb, which is slightly to the left. I am serious. She only needed to tilt her head a little bit and she would have saw it, but she used her singing anyway. In response, an evil roar echoes from deep within the mountain, causing her to drop the orb and shatter it against the ground, even though it was invincible 2 seconds ago and could break the laws of physics. As you can tell, this scene of failure, breaking the laws of the universe, and utter convenience is my absolute favorite thing to happen in this show so far. It's definitely not a masterclass of stupidity and how not to write anything.
What the hell is that?
We then see a scene of the Dwarf King succumbing to the evils of the ring, which is great that it happens to the dwarves instead of the elves. The writers don't have a favorite species at all. And it also makes total sense because obvious bad guy would definitely want hints that something is amiss. He would definitely want the corruption to happen quickly so that people could notice that he's obviously evil. Back at the forge, Assistant Lady fails like all the female characters do for some reason, causing chaos to spread throughout the area. Blacksmith Guy pulls her back to reality, and she reveals that she saw something evil in her visions. But no one connects the dots that it could be, oh, I don't know, the rando guy you don't know helping you make the rings. In fact, the blacksmith guy is a hair's width away from agreeing to help make the rings for the humans when he is conveniently distracted by the dwarf hero. Don't you just love when things conveniently happen so the plot can occur? That's just my favorite aspect of storytelling. That's not a flaw at all. The dwarf hero warns the blacksmith guy that the rings are secretly evil. Meanwhile, obvious bad guy is rizzing up the assistant lady. Obvious bad guy corrupts her thoughts against her boss and then takes her to bed, where they rock the very foundation of the city for hours. At least I assume. They faded to black before anything could happen because it's not that type of show. I gotta admit though, that was a bold strategy from obvious bad guy, comparing assistant lady to the femcell commander. In my experience, women don't particularly care to be compared to each other in relationships, but you know what? Obvious bad guy must have more riz than me. Back at the Game of Thrones ripoff, the Duns captain is at a religious ceremony for the deceased. For some inexplicable reason, everyone in there is stunned when their political opposition storms in and disrupts the service. The Duns captain decides to obey his wannabe queen and weather the storm by whipping his out and asking for a measuring contest. He almost immediately resorts to violence only to be stopped by random guy, and then he decides to give his political opponent orders. Pick up that sculpture and give it to the priest. Hey, Genius. Why don't you grab it yourself, hand it to the priest, and then drag everyone out of there so nothing bad happens? Of course, the random douche purposely dropped the sculpture onto the ground. What did you think was going to happen? Once again, being steadfast in the storm, the Dun's captain punches random douche across the face, starting a small riot. Because then the guards grab him so that random douche can return the favor, and then random guy has to get involved, and then the guards have to fight the civilians, and for some reason the armed men with training are unable to subdue their opponents. And then douche tries to drown rando guy, only for rando to twist it around so that he can dislocate douche's arm and then point a sword at douche's neck. And then Dun's captain begs Rando not to do it, so Rando drops the sword, turns around, raises his arms in surrender, and then gets stabbed from behind by douche. And then they act like this is shocking. Hello, you were fighting armed men. Someone was going to die. These idiots were not steadfast in the storm at all. They immediately reacted to the goading. I don't think they even lasted 24 hours before lashing out. I mean, come on. And then I noticed that there was more blood from the punches than from the stabbing, and I just burst out laughing. Like, what in the world was this scene? It was just awful.
This is worthless.
It's less than worthless, my boy.
There's a quick scene where obvious bad guy is obviously manipulating the blacksmith guy and doesn't get called out on it, despite it being obvious that it's happening. I mean, come on, his go-to expression is menacing. How come no one has kicked him out yet? Oh, they think he's a holy messenger. Then why are they arguing with him? It just doesn't make sense. Either they believe it or they don't. And then, surprisingly, we have the best scene in the whole damn episode, with Dwarf Hero confronting his father about the ring, only to be accepted by the king once again. The Dwarf King acknowledges that Dwarf Hero was right all along, and that he wants Dwarf Hero by his side going forward. Seeing the Dwarf King throw away his pride and the Dwarf Hero being floored by the turn of events was awesome. This is by far the best storyline in Rings of Power. When confronted by everything he ever wanted, the Dwarf Hero obviously caves, taking back his amulet from the king and becoming a prince once again. This stumble into temptation is probably the best representative of Tolkien's work in the show so far. I also loved how the Stone Singer lady didn't berate Dwarf Hero for falling into temptation and taking the amulet back. She knew that he had to. Instead, all she asked was that he never wear the ring, and he promised not to, but we all know that he probably is going to end up having it on his finger. All of this doesn't make the rest of the episode any better, especially the orb aspect of it, but still, I gotta admit when something was really good. And at this point I wrote down a note to take back the joke about the show promoting racism with the dwarves. They're still doing it with the elves and the humans, but not with the dwarves, so there you go. This was a glistening diamond in the middle of a giant turd.
Behind this bush, there's a turd made of solid gold.
And then the episode wraps up with Blacksmith Guy agreeing to make rings for the humans, all the while abusing the people around him, falling into obvious bad guy's obvious plan to trap him. I mean, come on, do you really need this guy to scream, "I am Lord Voldemort," for you to get the picture? And as the orcs arrive at the city, Elf Loser returns to Elf King in order to inform Elf King about what happened. Making me wonder what's going on with this timeline. We have seen the dwarves come and go from the city multiple times already. What is going on? What took you so long to get back from what, a half a day's journey? And then we jump to Femcel being in a cage surrounded by orcs. They let her out and then she reveals that she had a knife on her all along. Are you telling me that they didn't strip her of her armor, her weapons, and then did a pat down of her? I mean, I get they actually wanted her as an ally, but also you should still probably take the weapon away from someone in a cage. Unless they did do a pat down of her, and then that leaves the question of where she kept that knife. Oh. I guess that could work with a sheath, but if something goes wrong, there's gonna be a lot of anal bleeding.
And I'm gonna need you to put them way up inside your butthole, Morty.
My butt.
Put them way up inside there, as far as they can fit.
Oh, jeez, Rick.
And then the episode ended with Orc Commander Guy telling Femcel that they have a common enemy. And because the people behind the show think that we're all morons, they showed a clip of the obvious bad guy. Thanks for that, I never would have guessed. And that is Rings of Power Season 2, Episode 5. It was just brutally stupid, with one good scene throughout the entirety of the hour. Only 3 more episodes. Only 3 more episodes. Only 3 more episodes. But what did you think about the episode? Did you enjoy it? Did you think it was a giant flaming turd like me? Please leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And remember, if you disagree with everything I have to say, that's fine. After all, everyone is entitled to their objectively wrong opinion.
I hate my life.
I hate your life too, dude.
Thank you all so much for watching.
You're still here?
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. You bye. Boom.
Do not despair.